Hey, good evening, C3 parents, and thank you for waiting and being so patient. I am so happy to be here, and I'm super excited to talk about what we're going to cover tonight. And it's going to look at the difference between Dutch parenting and South African parenting, and what I would keep from what I'm learning from the Dutch parents. And one of the things that I've got a couple of questions about. All right, so obviously, contextually, we need to understand that South Africa is a completely different country than the Netherlands. However, even when we take that into account, there are extremely interesting differences in the approach to raising kids. Now, one of the first things that I've noticed is the sense of autonomy. Very few parents, even though they refer to their kids as this is my child, very few of the parents would ever um, treat their child as if they're their property. Children have a lot of freedom here in the Netherlands to, first of all, be who they are. Second of all, to actually organize their life. A lot of autonomy, a lot of freedom in decision making. And you see it actually from a very young age in the way that they organize their own social life. Now, one of the big shocks to my system, coming from a country where we as parents kind of control the day to day of our kids' lives, moving to a country where um, the children have their own like calendar or agenda. However, children get to choose certain things. Now, obviously, parents can override. There is some sense of not some sense, there is parental input in how children arrange their lives. However, because the school system is set up in a way that school is school. Sport is the extracurricular. Culture activities like choir and drama and all of that is a extracurricular. Um, all those things happens after school. So children go to school, for academic purposes, for personal development, for social development. But sports and those activities is obviously organized outside. So there's first of all, there's not that pressure on children to perform to be in the cool kids club. You're like, I'm first team this, I'm first team that. There's nothing like that. So there might be a bit of as a South African, thinking about on the sport back on the sport days, the athletics and competitiveness with other schools, rival schools. You don't experience it here. Here it is a school's there for academic purposes. The schools aren't each other's rivals. There's no bird mouthing. If something happens where schools actually get together, it's usually a cooperative kind of event. It's not really competitive towards each other. So, yes, the school will advertise certain sport events or social events or cultural events, but there's no that deep threat in South Africa. Like, I was in this school, and I will always be like that so-called school pride. However, um, and there is school pride. Kids are proud to be in the schools that they are in. They enjoy their schools. They love their schools. But their toxicity, there's none of that toxicity that I've experienced in South Africa, where you almost are not allowed to be, if you're a rebel, you're friends with the kids from the other school. You'll be okay to be a traitor to your school. Your whole personal identity, um, your whole personal identity does not revolve around the school that you attend. Um, there's not that kind of pressure. So kids come out of school and they actually have a choice. They have a choice in what sports they would like to do. There's not that pressure like you have to do this. And I think that the one thing that did catch me a bit off guard was we as parents are used to, especially like with the younger kids, you arrange the play dates for them, and you as the parent, up to a certain age, attend the play date with the kid. And here it is a completely different ball game. The kids make friends at school, and when they come out of school, they ask, can I have an appointment with this person today? Will it suit, like, at whose house are we going to play? um, and there's a lot more freedom with that, because the kids in general, especially in the younger groups, don't get homework. So they actually can, after school, go and have a play date with friends. Play dates are usually an hour and a half, a standard rule. Hour and a half, kids gets picked up, collected. Um, but the kid chooses where they go and play and when they reciprocate and how they want to do it. We've got a heel skuchterkind and now the Dutch and the Afrikaans and everything's coming through. A kiddo that's a bit on the shyer end of things. And in the beginning, I had to prompt, like, I hear you talk about this kid often. Why don't you invite them over? And I'm too scared, I'm too shy. Like, okay, fine, let me see who's the parent. And I would speak to the parent on the playground. And you know what the parent's reaction always, every single time is not, yeah, okay, fine, we set it up on Friday, I'll inform my kid. No, 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 no. It is, give me your number. I'll check if they, if they, in Dutch they say, of whoever the kid's name is, vind sin daarin. If the child finds, if they feel that they would like to, um, and then they will let you know, like, yes, we can do it on Friday, or listen here, Kitty said, no, they're not really up to it. Can we do it on a Monday or Tuesday or whatever other day is available? But it is so interesting how much children have a say in actively participating in their own lives. And I think that is something that we can bring through to a South African culture where kids should have that autonomy and should have that freedom. Where instead of the parents deciding, okay, this is what's going to happen, actually asking the kids if they actually find sense, find the need into spending time with that person on that day, would they feel up for it? And having that dynamic of being able to choose that they would like to go on a play date, that they all to go hang out together. Um, that kind of freedom of whether they would like to do sports or not, or what kind of sports. Unfortunately, I do understand in South African schools, obviously, sport and culture is almost like the bedrock of school and not academics. And no, I don't want to insult schools in South Africa, but the reality is, let's be extremely real about this. As much as academics, there's a certain value connected to academics, but especially in previously Model C schools, where sports can be part of the school structure because they've got the infrastructure and everything that goes with that. It's almost as if your child will be the odd one out if they're not sporty, if they do not feel like, you know, carrying the school blazer and the pride and the joy, and they have like these forced pride in a school or loyalty to a school. um, that's part of the South African mindset that I wish wasn't there. And I think that is something that as South African citizens can be taken from the Dutch system, that you know what, the school that you're in is not the begin all and the end all. It's not your identity, because truly here it's not the identity of the kids. The kids are truly allowed to embrace their identity of who they are and how they do with it. There's like really a lot of freedom. Another thing that stood out for me, besides the fact that kids are honestly here not viewed as property, is children in general offered trial class lessons before they attend a school full time, so that they can choose which school they feel most comfortable in. And ironically enough, our youngest chose the school, like we gave them options of two schools, and the one where my heart was like, oh, this is the kind of place that I would love to be educated in, was completely overwhelming for them, and they didn't want to go there. And they chose the other school, which was still an amazing school, and actually they're flourishing and they're happy, and it's just amazing what kiddo is achieving. However, it kind of like coming from what, once again, the South African mindset, like I as a parent have to make certain decisions for my kid, had to take a step back and just lean into and embrace the fact that my 6-year-old knows themselves better than when I know them, because they are like they know exactly what they're thinking, they know exactly what they're feeling, they know exactly what they're experiencing, they know exactly how comfortable they feel within a certain environment. Um, and I cannot feel that for them. So having like they have to like school's long hours. Think about it. You sit in school for such a long period of time. So for a kid to actually have that freedom to be able to choose which school, and have trial things, yes, once again, we're looking at South Africa, and there is the structural, the systemic, and there's so many other problems that is an issue there. But it would be great, if all children across the world would be given the opportunity to, before they actually have to start school, do a couple of trial lessons at different schools and have the opportunity to choose in which school they would want to be, because each school has a different vibe, each school has a different feeling to it. And I honestly think that if I was offered that opportunity as a child, I most probably would have chosen a different high school than what I was high school that I was in. And it's that kind of thing that kind of just shifts, like have to makes you rethink about how you approach kids. The freedom to be able to say no, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to attend this, or I don't feel like doing this. um, a lot of times as a parent, we sometimes want to organize and plan our kids' lives because we feel like if we don't remain on top of everything and remain in control of everything at all times, that we will fail as a parent. And one of I knew it in theory, I tried to practice it, but I really sucked at it, and I had to embrace it this side, was letting go of that control, allowing, not allowing, accepting that, you know what, our kids can plan their stuff and they can plan their lives, and they don't just have a say, that their input is so vital and so important. And I always thought I was a parent, like, before we came out. I always thought like, yeah, no, I'm a parent, like my kids have a say, you know. And in general, we're fairly good at it until you get challenged here, where kids are honestly, authentically their own human being, and they get to be who they are. It just brings home again the idea that school uniform, the only thing that school uniform does is alienate. It create it alienate, and what I mean by alienate, creates a rigidity that stifles growth, and it stifles authentic humanity, and it brings, once again, brings in that toxic thing. You have to look like this little worker bee, this little, everybody has to look exactly the same. And I know a lot of older generation people will balk at me about this, but I'm telling you now, I don't, length of hair, style of clothing, um color of hair, piercings, no piercings, none of that has any bearing on a child's academic ability, um, or at their success later in life. It truly comes down with people who are the happiest with themselves within their own skin, are people who, in general, actually experience life in a far more positive light. Their chances increase of being more successful, and really actually being able to get somewhere. And that freedom of identity, that authentic, the ability to authentically embrace yourself, is something that it truly comes through when you look at how they parent and how kids are being treated. They're not treated as royalty. Yes, they do get in, they do get scolded. They not scolded, they get reprimanded. They there is boundaries, but the amount of freedom that kids have really embraces the what in South Africa we've got in the constitution. You've got human rights for children, but it's not in practice. And here you can truly see that embracing of a child being a human being and a fully human being that just needs to learn and grow and figure out who they are, but they are a fully valid human being, and you see that. The thing that I do have a question every now and again, and I have like asked one or two of my Dutch friends every now and again, is I don't always understand how or how people can be comfortable to really give a certain amount of free reign to their kids, but then you go and look at how well adjusted majority of the kids here are when they're older. um, the low levels of crime, the low levels of uh, rebellious teenage, I want to say, problem scenarios that a lot of parents try so hard to parent your child just to prevent that from happening. We're prevention parenting a lot of times. Here in the Netherlands, um, my question, like that runs through my head when I think about parenting is, how did they switch that prevention parenting off and flipped it to um, supportive parenting? And I'm still learning how to make that switch between seeing a boundary as a form of prevention instead of, before you reach the boundary, there needs to be enablement that keeps your child, help you set your child up for a better situation. And as I'm discovering this, um, it is just so exciting to like re-look that instead of preventative parenting, rather to focus on supportive parenting. How can I set things up? How can I support? How can I guide? How can I bring things together? And how can I be a team player and a coach? And a team player, by what I mean is, be the support bars for your child, especially if they're very young, but also be their coach, to be a leader that leads not just from not from the front, or like, but um, but as part of the pack, as part of the process. And I see it often with so many parents here that then their kids, yes, they're strict parents, the kind of relationship that they have with their kids, it's just incredible. I'm astounded so many times when I listen to how the kids talk, and what they share, and how open they are. And I try to imagine myself in South Africa, thinking about, would I've ever heard this kind of conversation between a parent and a child without someone else thinking that this could be extremely rude? And I'm not even talking about tone of voice or extremely inappropriate. I'm not talking about tone of voice. I'm just talking about the general openness and readiness to receive the question from the child. And I do think that is something that, um, coming from, like, from South Africa, and I still see myself, my parenting style, breaking away from certain bonds from from the authoritarian kind of parenting that happens often. I was viewed as very liberal in South Africa, and here I'm actually fairly conservative. Who would have thunk that the approach to parenting, where I personally, how I parented my kids, was already in between preventative and supportive. And I'm growing now as a parenting coach, even more so into a parent that becomes more supportive, that tries to face certain realities, sugarcoat things even less, um, giving more choices, enabling more often. And I think that is one of the stark differences that I see, is that autonomy that children have here in comparison to the autonomy. And this has got nothing, and please understand, this autonomy has got nothing to do with economic freedom. It's got nothing to with economic privilege. It's got nothing to do with um, like even safety privilege, which we experience here. It honestly just got to do with the perspective that the adults have of kids, the value that children hold within the society. They are not less than. And unfortunately, in South Africa, very few parents view children as fully human. Very few parents. A lot of parents view children as their property, and they view their kids as they will do as I say, and they will have to bend to my will. And unfortunately, that creates even more rebellious behavior and that like more pushback. Um, so honestly, to me personally, what I've learned and what I'm really grasping onto here is not just, I always want to say, not just the lip service, or the like. Can I say this on YouTube? Um, yeah, here's the bit. I wanted to use another show. Not doing it halfway, but really fully embracing the role of coaching and doing the supportive parenting instead of preventative parenting. Um, so I'm going to try and do a video or otherwise another live. What is the difference between preventative and supportive parenting? Um, but I just wanted to share like this really big challenge and this really big part, like that's really, I think, the fundamental difference between South African parenting and Dutch parenting is just the perspective from where we start approaching parenting as itself. So guys, that is the end of it. If you have any more questions, please drop them. I will get to them. Or commentary. Please stay safe. Hit that like button, really helps out the channel. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, and I will chat with you soon. We are going to start a new video series. I am super excited about it. The editing is just taking very long, so you'll probably only in that series only see one a month come out, because it's a bit tricky. I've started reviewing. I'm starting to review children's movies. Or animation movies currently, but children's movies from a perspective, a parenting perspective, and obviously there will be a condensed version or a smaller version on the YouTube channel, and the extended version will be on my Patreon. Please go to the Patreon. It's at C3 Parenting. To our Patreon, support the community. If you join the Patreon community, there is a monthly podcast, a monthly video that goes on, and then also a nice video chat, a Q&A video chat. So I'd love to see you guys in there. Stay safe, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.